So now that you've seen the inside of my RV, I'm going to show you all of the pantry ingredients that I keep stocked inside all the time for every adventure. You're going to get a list of these things, but I wanted to talk through them with you in person so that you can understand a little bit more about why I select them, even if you might select different things. That tall, skinny pantry that's critical to my kitchen space in the Revel, I keep stocked with glass jars that never leave the RV. One of these ingredients is a big jar of granola. Usually I make it myself. Sometimes I buy it from a bakery wherever I'm at. Later in this course, I'm going to teach you how to make a delicious skillet granola in camp or wherever your RV is parked. Oats are a primary ingredient in that recipe. I also use them to make savory or sweet porridge for breakfast or for dinner. In addition to oats, I typically keep at least 2 and sometimes 3 types of grains on board the RV at all times. Today I've got quinoa, which is a nice protein-rich option, in addition to sushi rice and wild rice, just for a little bit of variety. Both of these ingredients cook up really fast in the rice cooker that I keep on board inside the RV. Gummy bears. We're never sorry to have gummy bears on board for when we're looking into the pantry to see what else we might like to eat later. Gummy bears are a nice treat. Chia seeds are an ingredient that I keep on board to add to porridge, but also I make chia seed pudding and sprinkle them in juices and a few other things in case we get a little bit dehydrated or just want a little extra texture in our meals. I always have some variety of beans or lentils on board as a vegetarian protein that cook up quickly in the Instant Pot that also lives in the storage space above the kitchen galley inside the RV. Other items that I keep inside that tall, skinny cabinet that aren't necessarily in glass jars are olive oil. I typically carry a medium grade olive oil that's not too expensive and not too inexpensive because it works well for both sauteing and cooking, but also for finishing. Veggie bouillon. This seems like kind of a strange ingredient to keep inside of the RV, but it's actually the key to making broths and soups and other types of broth-based meals really fast and easy without carrying a refrigerated box of broth and without bringing my own from home. Almond butter or some kind of nut butter also lives inside the van for quick snacks by the spoonful or to stir into sauces or even as dressings for noodles, as you'll see later in this course. Honey is a sweet option that I love to have on board. It's great for our immunity if we're traveling through places, especially in the springtime, but it's also a delicious addition to tea or to stir into porridge in the morning. And also this honey is from my backyard, so it makes me feel like I'm at home. Similar to the veggie bouillon, coconut milk is a great ingredient to keep on hand to make stews or broths or to flavor up a sauce, or in this case to make chilaquiles, as we'll make later in the course. Lastly, one of my favorite cooking oils is ghee. I love using ghee in any season because it's a high heat cooking oil, which means I can use it for sauteing or even stir frying if I wanted, and I can also spread it on toast instead of butter. So it's really, really versatile, it's very delicious, and it's great shelf stable, so I don't have to keep it in the fridge. Tinned mussels or seafood are something that we always keep inside the van because they're shelf stable, they're protein rich, really flavorful, and wonderful additions to things like pasta that we'll make later in this course. You can also get varieties of fish or oysters, but I particularly love the mussels just because I love the flavor profile and they're really easy to mix into a wide variety of things. So those are all the ingredients that live inside the tall, skinny pantry, basics of my RV kitchen. In the refrigerator, I've got a few other really important flavor agents that are with me at all times. Bragg's liquid aminos is a savory, I call it a flavor agent because it boosts the flavor in all of my meals. I use it for salad dressings, I use it as a dressing over grain bowls, and in particular I use it in conjunction with rice vinegar or another type of vinegar to add a salty and a sour flavor to whatever I'm cooking. Another flavor agent that pairs well with these two is maple syrup, which, by the way, if you aren't storing your maple syrup in the refrigerator, jam it in there right now because the natural compounds inside your maple will go rancid if they don't live in the fridge. Another reason that I like to keep honey on hand as an alternative in case I don't have refrigerator space. Along the lines of the veggie bouillon and the coconut milk is this little packet of miso. It's small and compact, it's easy to fit into the refrigerator, and it's a really wonderful way to make broths quickly. It's also a wonderful rehydrating agent in the wintertime if we come in from a ski and we maybe have sweated a little too hard on the uphill. We'll make a quick miso broth that's a lovely way to replenish electrolytes when we're out in the backcountry. One more thing that lives in the refrigerator, some kind of hot sauce, whether it's sriracha or this favorite everyday sauce that's got beautiful organic ingredients. something that's going to spice up our meals is on hand at all times. So that's the refrigerator. The spice section of my pantry is huge and maybe bigger than many people would think would be necessary. But for me, spices are an absolute necessity because they build flavor in my meals and in a really dynamic and deep way. I use the same types of magnetic containers at home so that I can easily transfer spices from my home spice cabinet to the magnetic board in the kitchen space inside the RV. And so that's a really easy way for me to swap ingredients in and out and make sure I have a nice diversity of things to play with when I'm on the road. This is a small jar of hemp seeds. It's actually not a spice. So these jars are also really handy for storing small ingredients that maybe would get lost in the pantry but that I want to have quick access to. Hemp seed is great sprinkled on salads or grain bowls or porridge, wherever you like. Spices that I am keeping on board include things like turmeric and ginger, peppercorns that I use to reload my little trigger pepper grinder. In this little container I've got some Urfa pepper, which is kind of like a smoky red pepper alternative that's from a Mediterranean region. It just adds a little bit of flair to whatever I'm cooking. Sea salt is of course a massive ingredient. This is a flaky sea salt. One of my favorite varieties of this is the Malden sea salt. Super big flakes, and I like this particular salt because I can take a little pinch of it and crush it up into a small grain, so it's great for mixing in to anything that I might be cooking, but I can also finish with it with a larger grain so I get a more salty impact as the last flavor. Two last ingredients that live in the spice section but that aren't spices are coconut milk powder, which I use to beef up our porridge or sometimes to make hot chocolate in conjunction with this raw chocolate powder or raw cocoa powder. These are just things that I keep on hand to sprinkle here and there. They're not spices, but I want a small quantity of them with me on board, particularly for making hot chocolate. A couple last things that live in that tall, skinny pantry cabinet that are really, really helpful for me and really, really helpful for you too, I'm sure. Dry pasta, any shape will do. It's great for a variety of different purposes. Nori is something else that I also keep in the van. So I take these little sheets of seaweed paper and crumble them up and add them to dishes like the nori pasta that we'll learn later in this course, or I use it to make a homemade furikake if I don't have access to it at the grocery store. Sometimes I also just eat these as snacks or add it to popcorn or to savory porridge. It's a really versatile, unexpected ingredient that adds a hit of savory flavoring but also salty flavoring, which is really important, especially if you're out on adventures in your RV that are a little bit sweaty. The last section of our pantry isn't actually in the pantry section. It lives in the onboard cabinet above the dining area inside the RV. And as you saw from the tour, I use these cool little plastic boxes that stack neatly without rocking around to organize ingredients up there. These are things that I'm not necessarily using for cooking, but I'm just using on a regular basis. And this little box in particular is dedicated to tea and coffee. So I always have some kind or some variety of loose tea and tea bags, again, for just a couple different options. And then there are two different types of mornings that we have inside the RV, either the kind of morning where we take time to brew our coffee in a little percolator, or we use instant coffee, and there are a variety of different options for this. It's a nice way to try a bunch of different coffees without having to worry about whether or not they've been roasted just a couple of days ago. We have one more box inside the RV that I keep packed with hydration products or anything that we'd be using for the sports and outdoor endeavors that we're doing from the RV. This particular box contains things like electrolyte mix to keep us hydrated, and also easily packaged snacks in case I haven't made something and brought it from home. It's just a little bit of like a safety blanket for when we're out there doing activities in the backcountry. So these are all the ingredients that I keep inside the RV at all times for making quick meals. You'll have a downloadable PDF of this list and all of these ingredients associated with this course. Next, I'm going to talk about all of the equipment, the knives, the cookware, the cutting boards that you'll need to take these ingredients and turn them into delicious meals.